And we are live. Welcome, guys, back to another episode of Sunday Scaries. This one is going to be recorded on Zoom. We've been having some technical difficulties, and so hopefully this will be up by Sunday night. If not, maybe Monday morning. We've got some pretty good topics to talk about this week. It's been a crazy week in Bitcoin. What are some funny things you guys have seen this past week? Because I don't know. Twitter's been lighting up. Dude, yeah. Mitch, your video was hilarious. The one person who was like, "Hey, I don't want to be part of this." They were wearing a buff sweatshirt, and I was like, "No."
Yeah, I don't know why she didn't want to be a part of it, man.
Yeah,
I'm just asking about the Soviet Union. I'm not asking, who did you vote for in the 2020 presidential election?
Exactly. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Mitch's video came out. Your show's called The Bell Curve, right? Yeah. Bell Curve. And he basically goes around and interviews people and asks them about Bitcoin, sound money, systems of economics. And this episode, it was on what the difference is between a market economy and a socialist economy.
Yeah.
And there were very few people had good answers. It was crazy.
The one dude who I asked him 3 times, can you define socialism? And he said no. But he continued to try and explain why socialism was better than capitalism. But I asked him 3 times to define socialism, and he couldn't. So I don't know why he thought it was.
Can you tell me why? And he's like, I know. It's crazy.
I about died laughing at the part where you fast forwarded 30, 35 seconds of conversation, and all you put was text, not answering the question.
That's funny. That's really funny. All right, so we've had some pretty big news this past week. So we had a couple articles come out about the Lightning Network. Sean, I know that you wanted to talk about that. Later, I would love to get to the fact that the Navajo Nations now mining Bitcoin. That was a story that dropped this week that was awesome. We can also talk about the fact that El Salvador used Bitcoin profits to build 20 schools. So lots to come. Also, right, celebrities, taking their celebrities and mayors taking their salaries in Bitcoin. So lots of interesting topics to come for those of you who are joining. This is going to be kind of a speed round because we've only got 40 minutes. So Sean, why don't you take us away with the first one? You should be able to share your screen if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share real quick. So this first article is technically it's by Marty Bent, but he's not really the person that's talking about this. He's just kind of bringing light to this post that somebody else did. And the title is Solving for, I don't know if that's in everybody's way or not. It says Solving for Jamming Attacks on the Lightning Network. So this particular issue that they're talking about is on the Lightning Network, an attack can be wedged by a malicious actor who takes up channel capacity by taking up sat real estate on path by initiating a payment they never intended to complete. And this freezes liquidity, which can cause issues. Now, this rarely ever happens at all. But the point is that there is this small thing that can go wrong with freezing liquidity with somebody starting a transaction they never actually mean to complete. If you go into the article, there's a quick little subsection of Jamming 101 just that explains how jamming works.
Will you tell us, because I'm not super familiar with how it works?
Okay, so I'll read this for anybody that's just listening to audio. Lightning Network is a network of nodes helping, usually for a fee, for each other to make payments via payment channels. If Alice and Bob don't have a direct channel, they can use a path of routing nodes between them to forward this payment by adjusting the balances in the channel along the path. Now, simply put, that just means that if you don't have a direct channel with somebody, you can work with other people and you can create a path that eventually gets to that person to create that payment. It's important for these multi-hop payments to be atomic. Otherwise, there is a risk of routing nodes taking the funds without forwarding them. Multi-hop payments happen in 2 phases, locking the funds on the path from sender to receiver, and then shifting the balances by propagating the secret from receiver to sender. So basically, whenever this payment goes to go through, the secret that needs to be communicated to finalize the transaction, they basically withhold that secret.
Got it. So the bandwidth is being reserved ahead of time to assure, okay, we know actually this payment can get sent from point A to point B. Now that we know that, we're going to go ahead and tell you the secrets that we need to tell you in order to make it happen.
Right.
Okay.
the main idea behind jamming is occupying the capabilities of routing nodes to forward payments by making fake payments and never finalizing them. For the attack duration, it becomes impossible for routing nodes to forward each other honest payments. Now, this particular article that he cites in his newsletter, there's a pretty long conversation about 4 or 5 possible solutions to this. And they basically come down to making people put staked ownership of like stake certificates to show that you were here, you had this liquidity, and just basically time stamping it. And then it allows people to just go back to like the previous block. And if you can't keep up with it, then you get knocked out and it frees everybody's funds up. But there's a couple of different possibilities to fix it. And it's not super important to go into what those fixes are today. More what bringing up this article was to me was in the current existing fiat system, which Saifedean is really doing an exceptional job explaining in his new book, The Fiat Standard. I started reading the PDF of it earlier today. And
is that out yet, Sean?
No, if you pre-order the book, then you get the PDF for free. So
Awesome.
You can like start reading it before it actually comes out.
That's cool.
The biggest point being that he's trying to define a lot of how the fiat system works and the issues with it and its complete lack of transparency. And you have the exact opposite here with Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Not only is the entire system transparent, but the issues with it are transparent. Like we're putting this out in public to everyone. Hey, here's the conversation. Here's the issue that's happening. And here's a bunch of possible ways that we want to solve it. And in a very open source conversation, we're just putting it out to the public saying, we need to fix this. And that's clearly different from what we experience now.
You know, Sean, the way that I kind of see this, the structure is kind of analogous to operating systems, right? If you've ever kind of had the discussion of operating systems, for those of you who don't know, like your computer runs an OS that allows you to do a bunch of other things. So like you might run Mac OS if you're on a Mac, you might run, you know, Windows if you're on PC. And all of these OS like compete with each other for market share, right? But you know, there's one Linux, right, that kind of underpins all of the other OSs, and there's a reason for that. You know, like all of the servers run on like a version of Linux. You know, Mac OS is actually built on top of and in part on Linux, and the reason for that being is they've kind of taken on this open architecture where the vulnerabilities, the design direction, and all of sort of like the things that they need to get done to make the OS better is publicly available, right, and open sourced. And so we've kind of seen that makes more resilient systems in the long term, right? There's a reason why servers run on Linux. Is because it's incredibly bulletproof. It's straightforward to what's it called? Kind of work out the kinks if you troubleshoot, if you've got any issues. And it's just really robust. And that's kind of, I feel like, analogous to what we're seeing here. Would you say that's
so? Linux is the base layer for operating systems.
Almost, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, almost.
The majority of them, like it would, if you actually use a pretty pure form of Linux and you put it right beside a Mac OS, you'll be like, motherfucker. It's just a prettier version of Linux.
That's right. And so, but the important thing about that is why did Linux win? Well, Linux won because it has this open architecture where everybody can work on it at once, and the benefits that one party have from developing Linux for themselves for some use case actually transfers over to everybody else who uses the system. And so the Lightning Network's very much the same thing, right? When they're publishing these issues and they're saying, hey, here's a potential attack vector, right? The whole community is going to go figure out what to do about it, make it better, and that pays dividends to everybody who's plugged into that system, right? So the network effects are just amazing. That's kind of how I see the Lightning Network and kind of these how transparent it is, right?
Yeah, and it functions in a very similar way. Like we could, in a lot of ways, you could look at Lightning as an operating system built on top of Bitcoin, right? It just makes things more easily accessible, and by everyone working together to fix these issues, it doesn't just fix the project of Lightning, it fixes all of the future projects, you know, that are going to be built on Lightning. It's very much like instead of an Internet of Things, it's very much like an Internet of Communication.
Totally. Yeah, what I find interesting is that there's so many people who still don't know about Lightning. Most like people I talk to about Bitcoin, I'm like, or crypto even, they're like, hey, the conversation starts to like, hey, how do I buy Shiba? And I go, I go laugh, and then I go tell them about this thing called Bitcoin, and even people who are in crypto, right? I'm like, they're like, well, Bitcoin can't do peer-to-peer transactions, and I'm like, what about the Lightning Network? And they're like, what's that? So
Yeah,
people
nobody knows
still,
about that.
yeah, but I
But
think
also, something this article really highlights to me is like how great it is that we have the base layer. Because Lightning can have these problems, and it sucks, but they'll figure it out. But it doesn't matter because the base layer still works. As long as we have the base layer Bitcoin, that's still infinitely better than any other system.
100%. And the Lightning Network, by nature of sitting on top of Bitcoin, references the base chain, right? So it inherits a lot of that security. So even if you get an attack like this, it really, what this attack would do is just kind of limit the operability of the network. It wouldn't actually take anybody's Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing too. Is like whenever we're talking about one of the biggest attack vectors that people currently see in Lightning, it has nothing to do with anybody losing their money. It's just,
right,
hey, this might hold up transactions for a little bit. Like your liquidity might get frozen, which might prevent you from being able to facilitate some payments and earn some sats. Yeah, sure, but like nobody's stealing anything from you, and like this is an important conversation that's being put out there that multiple people are trying to fix, and it's just a completely divergent from the current system that we have.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to see. And, I'm really excited to see how merchants start to integrate this. I saw a tweet today where, somebody touched down in El Salvador and they used Lightning all day and they didn't buy a single thing with $1, right? They bought everything with sats. So it's really amazing to see that, not only is this network viable, but it's scaling and it's working today on nation state scales, right? It's here, it's ready, right? Like one of the things that I think is really interesting is that in Ethereum, it's always like, yeah, it's layer 2 scaling is coming. It's coming. It's coming. They were saying that, they've been saying that for years, right? It's coming. Sharding, whatever, roll-ups. And and Lightning's here, right? It's here now. And now we can do bunch of transactions a second. It's scalable, and it's made it possible for a nation like El Salvador to actually adopt it as a legal tender. So speaking of which, Sean, what were you going to say?
I'm pretty sure we're about to transition in the same thing, which is I was just gonna say that we talk a lot about El Salvador and their nation state adoption, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it solves for much smaller communities too, which I'm more than sure you were about to lead into the Navajo Nation. So
oh, okay. My what's it called? Segue was a little bit different, but that's fine. Let's talk about the Navajo Nation. So did you guys heard about this, right? So
Enlighten me.
What's up, Mitch?
Enlighten me.
Yeah, so the Navajo Nation is now mining Bitcoin. It's awesome. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, the Navajo Nation is a nation within, right, the United States of America. It's its own sovereign nation, and so I believe it's located in like the pretty like middle, like around Colorado, Utah, right? No, where
It
is the
says
Navajo Nation?
Northeast Arizona.
Yeah, Northeast Arizona. All right, so like southern tip of Colorado. And so yeah, it's like 400,000 people. It's really substantial, and they were kind of pushed to this land, obviously, as we kind of got settlers and the whole manifest destiny. But this community of people has been systemically oppressed and treated really poorly for 200 plus years. And it's not to say like, oh, the US is always bad and this is a terrible country, right? But it's just a fact, right, that they've just been neglected in a pretty big way. Certainly haven't been served by financial institutions the same way that you're given US citizen has. In fact, there was a lawsuit between the Navajo Nation and Wells Fargo because of predatory practices. That's a lawsuit they won. And so so this population has kind of been preyed upon by various corporations and financial institutions, and actually they have really energy rich land. So if you look at where power came from, for Las Vegas, for a bunch of cities in Arizona, it actually comes from power plants that are on Navajo land, because they've got coal and uranium. And so it was really it made a lot of sense to build kind of those power there. But if you look at like the way that they're living, a lot of them don't even have power. A lot of them don't have running water. Incredibly impoverished, and this is something that now, right, Navajo are finding Bitcoin, and they're saying, hey, you know what? We can monetize this energy that we have, right? So they've got really uranium rich land, really, coal rich land. They can monetize that energy and retain it within their community, right? And I think that's something that's really interesting. We've kind of seen this kind of community really pushed to the side, and I wonder if Bitcoin's going to be kind of a tool to help them solve some of their own problems. Because this isn't about like people coming in and saving them, right? Like they're the ones doing the mining, they're the ones coming up with the capital to do it, and ultimately, like they're the ones that are going to have to solve the problems that are closest to them, because they're the ones who know them the best. And so I don't know, what do you guys think about this? Is this cool? Is this not really big news?
Incredibly clever on their part. I hadn't heard about this, but from an energy standpoint, it makes sense. Like, why would they not capture that energy and monetize it and store it in somewhere where it's not going to leak? They can send it anywhere. And then from a financial perspective, it makes perfect sense. Why would they not use this immutable ledger to conduct their business? I mean, it's a population of 400 people, you said. Like, why would
400,000? Yeah.
400,000? Okay, wow, that's a lot larger.
Yeah.
Why would they not use it, especially if they're having difficulty with the traditional financial system serving them properly? This is just a complete alternative. Like, there's such a 400,000. That's so small relative to the rest of the United States. Like, they can easily get the whole population on board there.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Like the critical mass to complete adoption is pretty low, probably. Sean, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, some of these stats are just like kind of staggering that he cited in the article, from a testimony from April 2021. Nearly 50% of Navajo are unemployed, 40% don't have running water, 32% live without electricity, and 30% live below the poverty line. So I think that, one, it's cool that they're being able to slowly start facilitating, their own wealth by using Bitcoin mining and utilizing the energy that they have. But I think that it also opens up the potential for them to facilitate the wealth of others, which, everybody always knows that money or asset management's, one of the kings of your economic productivity. So being able to facilitate their own energy resources and offer that out, where, historically, as he talks about in this article, like, they've not had access to control their own currency. They've not had access to control their own land, even, because that was part of the treaties that they signed with the United States. They didn't get to make those decisions. But, pending the lawsuits and a lot of the fighting that they've had, they've been able to somewhat reclaim some of that, and they're continuing to fight to do so. But being able to use their land for their own benefit, by creating mines and being able to facilitate energy use for other people that want to go into that, and then be able to charge a premium for that, I think that's going to be really good.
Yeah. And my hope for this, and obviously we kind of have to see where it goes, but my hope for this is that a lot of that economic benefit gets reinvested into the community. And I think that the way you have that happen is the Navajo need to have ownership over the means of energy production, like all the stuff that's going on within their land. So I really hope that they retain that, and that they're able to reinvest that, because I think this could be a massive force for good within their own community, and hopefully, right, it can be directed by them, right? So it's not like somebody coming in saying, hey, this is what you should do with your money. It's like, they kind of decide via their economic beliefs and their cultural norms, and they invest in their own community how they want. That's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin. I mean, it's this open monetary network. it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are, you can plug in and benefit, like that.
How are they powering the mines?
The miners,
Yeah.
they have coal and uranium. So theoretically, right, I know they already have coal plants. A lot of them have been decommissioned, but I mean, you could get nuclear, but that the capital cost up front for nuclear plants is super high. I know it's getting brought down, but that's kind of the piece that I'm really interested to see is how do they finance the energy production up front? Because like to build a new nuclear plant is like billions of dollars. I mean, it's insane. So
a report that, like recently came out about somebody was designing like 70 nuclear plants over the course of the next like 25 years, and only like 11 had been made since like you could make them,
right.
which was crazy ambitious. Was it China? Like who said that? There was a report that came out within
I don't
the
know,
past,
but
like,
I know that a lot of like countries that are a part of the climate accords are now looking to nuclear, right? Like before we kind of had this like aversion to nuclear power, and now we're coming back because we realize there's no way we're going to, hit our goals of carbon emissions if we're not using nuclear. And nuclear is incredibly efficient. So, I mean, if it's under the label of saving the climate, or if it's under the label of, hey, this is just really efficient, I don't care which one it is. I think nuclear is great. We should be using it. So,
how much do you have any idea how much it is to like to manufacture a fucking nuclear plant?
To build a new nuclear plant.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, why don't you? I mean, the capital cost up front is massive. It's a huge endeavor to build a nuclear plant. I mean, it's on the order of,
other than like just facilities. Is it? Do you have to like install certain protections in case like a Chernobyl type event or something?
yeah, I think it's just, yeah, it's expensive from an engineering perspective, certainly from a materials perspective, and then from a regulatory perspective, I don't know what the associated cost is with that, and I don't know what the regulatory framework that the Navajo Nations, working with. So I wonder if they could greenlight their own project, or if they have to get some approval or whatever. But yeah, I think it'll be a challenge to build. But I think
either way, it's still great to see like any sort of struggling economy be able to take their own resources and immediately be able to transition into something that they just didn't have the option of before.
right. It's like how are you going to monetize that?
Yeah, that's like the biggest message there is that it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter how screwed you've been,
right?
An option to fix it. We're seeing that in South America with El Salvador, and we're going to see it with more countries as they continue to go. But like, it's just change across the board, whether it's the nation state level, where it's Navajo Nation level, whether it's just small opening up your own mining facility and using the own energy that you were previously wasting. Like, it doesn't matter. It can work for anybody as long as you can find energy and put it to a proper output.
Totally. Yeah. And obviously there's a part that the US needs to play, right, in kind of rolling back probably some of these predatory regulations and, colonistic kind of attitudes. But certainly, right, as they kind of reclaim some power and economic autonomy through Bitcoin, it'll become easier and easier for them to win battles, right? And so, yeah, it's awesome, great to see it. So that's kind of my thoughts. But I'm gonna keep watching this because I'm stoked.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to see where it goes.
Yeah,
I mean, this is adoption right here. Like, we're not going to see the Fed come out and be like, "Oh, we're changing all our reserves to Bitcoin." We're not
right.
going to see huge major announcements. It's just going to be one sector, one little community adopts it here, one community adopts it there, and it's going to start popping up everywhere until you look around and half the world is running on a Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, right, we see all of these mayors, right? Who is Suarez said he's going to take his entire salary in Bitcoin. That's crazy, right? So you're totally right, Mitchell. It's popping up on like these smaller geographic locations, but we kind of forget about that. I read a really good tweet thread today which talks about how the US actually in its governance is more decentralized than everybody thinks it is, because all of this attention's on the federal government. But we kind of forget that like states and even cities have a lot of autonomy within this country.
Mhm.
What do you guys think of this story? I mean, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was just his next paycheck. I don't think he's going 100% Bitcoin. It's definitely cool. We like to see it.
Yeah.
I think the South Dakota or the Wyoming lady was doing it again, doing
Yeah,
as well. The New York
Senator.
mayor,
Oh, I forget what her name is.
Loomis, Cynthia
Loomis.
Loomis.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, Cynthia. And then the New York mayor was going to do a paycheck too. Aaron
This-
Rodgers to me is the dopest one.
Yeah,
Didn't he just came under flack for some shit? What did he do?
He is allergic to an ingredient in the mRNA thingy, and so he didn't get it, and he wasn't playing today because he tested positive for that thing. So
well,
yeah.
and I think the other thing too was, weren't people giving him a hard time and they were trying to nail him down politically? And he goes, you know, I kind of opt out of the political stuff. He goes, you know, the left is crazy, the right is crazy. They want to put us in these political camps, and he was kind of opting out, and people were villainizing him for that too, I think.
That's the only thing that I saw, and I think the language that he used was the right will champion me and the left will cancel me.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's
I thought that was funny. I assumed it was something related to that, but I hadn't actually looked into
Yeah.
it.
And he went on the Pat McAfee show. Oh, it's just my connection is unstable. Hope you can hear me.
yeah, we got you.
And okay, he gave a perfect. He goes on there every week. He gave a great 30, 45-minute conversation detailing exactly why this wasn't right for him, and it's similar to how Joe Rogan did. And they just, mainstream media was having none of it. That he went into the ridiculousness of the NFL's policies and all that. And we kind of got off topic there, but
No, I mean, this
Aaron
is perfectly
Rodgers
on topic.
based.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, it's perfectly on topic. I mean, I think, like, it's important to talk about these things too, because, like, I constantly, people are trying to nail me down for one side of the political spectrum versus the other. And it's really hard to kind of try to opt out of that. And at this point, I think we had Trump. Then now we've had a really big swing to the left. I don't necessarily agree with everything that both sides are saying. And so, having other people who stand up and go, yeah, people are going to try to cancel me. These people are going to love me, but, I kind of stand for what I stand for. And that, that's important. And I think that's kind of what these mayors are doing, right? Like Bitcoin's neither left or right, it just is. And they're opting in, all over the country. And this article that I say that says that Suarez is taking his entire salary in Bitcoin. Is that
Okay?
Have we fact checked that, Sean? Is that correct?
I have not fact checked that at all.
Okay.
What?
Because this is Bitcoin Magazine. This is what I'm looking at here. I'll share my screen. So
I feel very comfortable getting my entire salary in Bitcoin.
He said in an interview.
Yeah. So.
And I like this
Wow.
part too. He says government spending. I know it's like they're trying to one up
Okay,
each
yeah,
other.
I see where it said. I saw that on Twitter where it said he was just doing his next paycheck, but according to this article on Bitcoin Magazine, he said he wasn't happy with just the one payment, and so he's going to do it all in Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think that's in response to the New York mayor, the newly elected New York mayor, being like, hey, I'm going to take my first 3 or whatever it was, and he's like, fuck it,
Yeah.
all in.
Now we've seen like I think there's like 4 or 5 mayors that have popped up, and I think it was Natalie Brunell, who
Yeah.
I don't know if she's had any success with it, but she wanted to start like a challenge on Twitter where it was basically one of those like you tag somebody and call them out to do a challenge. And the challenge is to like accept your next paycheck in Bitcoin. And I'm pretty sure she started by going at The Rock.
She did. Here, I've got the tweet right here. Yeah. So here we go. The Rock. We'll see if The Rock gets his next paycheck. Do you guys
That's
think
a
he's going
bold
to run?
first tag.
What's up?
That's a bold first tag.
That is
Tagging
a
the
bold
Rock.
first tag.
I'm sure his notifications are swamped.
Yeah, let's see if there's any other like popular responses in here. Let's see, Jack, he probably has already. Peter Schiff, that's pretty good. Joe Rogan.
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying if
Greta Thunberg.
Peter Schiff accepted it, he'd break the internet.
Oh, Snoop Dogg.
Here's what I
see
think
Snoop
about
Dogg
Peter
doing it.
Schiff.
Yeah.
I believe he's a whale. I really honestly do, because
No
he
way.
tweets about Bitcoin constantly. I've heard him on podcasts. He understands finances. He understands macroeconomics. He knows. I think the whole gold thing is, maybe he's a really like paranoid. He doesn't want people to know he's got Bitcoin for security reasons. And his son, they do that engagement thing where his son will chirp at him. Like, I didn't know who Peter Schiff was until he started ragging on Bitcoin. To me, he talks about it way too much to be anti-Bitcoin, especially the way he just understands macroeconomics, how the Fed has just ruined the dollar. And that's it's just my belief. He's one of those secret whales, and we may or may not ever get confirmation on that, but he tweets about Bitcoin every day. Like, nobody who does that is not into Bitcoin.
We need to get tinfoil hats for these segments. You know,
We do.
so we can put them on and be like, okay, this is a hot take, and then we can take them off, you know, when we're done. But I don't know, Mitch. I think you could be right. I mean, certainly he's gotten more engagement. His business is probably doing a lot better. I don't think that he doesn't get it, right? Like, I think he gets it. Obviously he does.
He's explained, like the technical stuff about it before. He just says it's still worthless because there's no tangibility to it.
Right.
That seems to be his main argument.
Right. And we all know, like, Bitcoin's backed by proof of work. I mean, it's literally the laws of thermodynamics of how much energy you can convert into computational power. Like, that's what's, backing this thing. It's arguably better than like being a physical object, but I don't know, man. You could be right.
The transactions on the blockchain are the tangibility.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, he just seems too smart in economics to not get it and too engaged with the community.
Maybe we'll bring him over one day. Maybe we'll bring him over one day.
He's welcome for an open discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I know him.
I'll prove that he is a secret hodler. And he's going on Pomp and stuff all the time. Like, he's on there once a month or something. Like, he wants that Bitcoin audience.
We should get him on here.
That's the thing that makes me think that he's probably already in it at least a decent bit. That he's so willing to have engaged open dialogues with Bitcoiners. You hated it this much, man.
Yeah, seriously.
And we agree on the problem too.
Yeah, exactly. He thinks gold's the solution, which obviously is not correct.
Yeah, it's probably not
the only asset that didn't pump since the money printing.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Yeah, gold literally failed its one use case. People are like, it's a hedge against inflation. And not only did it go down versus the dollar, but then you had the inflation stacked on top of it. So you actually lost the delta plus the inflation. So you got totally fucked. Yeah, it was ridiculous. What time did you say you had a hard stop, Mitch? Was it 10
like
after?
7:10, yeah.
All right, well.
So we got 4.
So one thing that I've been thinking about recently, I forget whose podcast Pete Rizzo was recently on. I think it was McCormack's. And one thing that Pete's been talking about recently is that there's no such thing as a Bitcoiner. And I like this because there's no such thing as a Bitcoiner, because you can only have actions that align to Bitcoin and you have actions that do not align to Bitcoin, but that there are no Bitcoiners. Sometimes you're just more aligned to the protocol than not.
Who decides what's aligned with the protocol, though? Like, that's like the subjectivity.
It's a slippery slope there. It is a slippery slope there, but I do think that it's a way to step away from political affiliation. Like, the one becoming a Bitcoiner becomes a political affiliation because people are going to try and do that. They're going to try and put it in that box. And I think that it's a good way to step away from that. That like, no, I have actions that align, that like further adoption, that further the protocol itself, and then I have actions that do not do those things, and it's
Yeah.
just separated between that. And I just think that that's a fascinating conversation that's worth having.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, it's also like, yeah, right. Yeah, we were saying there's a danger that we're going to get put in a box and sort of affiliated with libertarians or, blah, 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 blah. And then, right, like everything that we stand for has to be against some other group, right? So,
Right.
yeah, trying to like toe the line and just stay above it is like the ultimate goal, I think, with Bitcoin.
Right. And I think Bitcoin does it. I think the protocol of Bitcoin does it.
It's the
But
people.
I think it's very hard for us as individuals to maintain that and to be able to transcend that.
I kind of disagree, and let me explain why. Because I really, when it comes to like politics and people talk about being political, I don't really view it Democrat, Republican. I view it the mainstream establishment, mainstream media, government, three-letter agencies, traditional finance, and the freedom crowd who just wants to do what they want to do and be left alone. And Bitcoin obviously sticks with the latter, but I think, I mean, there's people in both political parties that are on the establishment or on pro freedom. And I just think Bitcoin is that pro freedom. And I think where the political divide has been the last year and a half and where it's going to continue to go is down that establishment versus freedom line.
Yeah.
So you would argue that there are Bitcoiners.
No, not necessarily, because again, there's people who are pro Bitcoin. They have certain beliefs about sound money, but then they also have certain beliefs that are sort of pro state, pro governance that I would say are not aligned with the Bitcoin protocol, which is sort of do your own thing. Let's not have the state involved. Let's let math and code be the state, be the rulers, etc. So I would agree that there's no Bitcoiners, because I see people who they have these actions that are kind of Bitcoin, and then sometimes they do things that I'm like, I don't think that's in line with Bitcoin. Erica Rhodes is an example. I think it's great that she's pro Bitcoin, but I think other actions she takes wouldn't exactly line with the ethos of Bitcoin.
Right. But I think what you're talking about, which is this, pro freedom versus, in a lot of ways, anti freedom, right? If their establishment, in a lot of ways, they're looking to consolidate power by restricting freedom. I think that is stepping above the Democrat versus Republican talk.
Yeah.
I think that is one level above it, because like that, I would very much I stand with you on that, right? I'm super pro freedom. I'm more pro freedom than I am pro Bitcoin, pro US government, or like, United States of America, right? I'm more pro freedom than anything else. But it's the fact that people are always trying to label you, left or right, I think is kind of like the squabble. And the squabble is distracting from the real battle that's going on. And that's between establishment, which is seeking to kind of instigate that squabble, and then freedom. So
yeah, I agree 100% with that.
Yeah. So that's like the bigger thing that's going on for sure. We can talk about El Salvador using Bitcoin profits to build schools. I mean, does that sound exciting to you guys? I don't know, how are they doing this? Are they selling Bitcoin? Because that's a big no. What's going on here?
I haven't actually.
I think what they're doing, they are selling Bitcoin. I believe they were selling to where the leftover dollar amount is like their initial investment. So they're just scraping off the top the fiat profits.
Got it. Okay. So in nominal dollar terms, they're retaining their position, but as terms of Bitcoin, they're it's less. Okay.
Yeah.
But they're building schools. I mean, okay, here's the thing that I'll say, right? Like El Salvador, right? They used to have like an IMF program. That's how they got, in a lot of ways. Actually, let me fact check that. I believe they did, but I don't remember for sure.
So I feel like this can talk about like, aside from opening the schools, when is it appropriate, if ever, to sell your Bitcoin? Is 20 schools a good enough reason?
Maybe
it's I could see an argument for both sides. You another couple of months, you could have built 40 schools with the same Bitcoin. Who knows? Like, it's one of those things. I personally will not be selling my Bitcoin for a very long time. But at the end of the day, when we're not there now, when we reach a state where Bitcoin is the money, is the premier store of value, like, why would you not spend it on actual goods and services? Because at the end of the day, that's what money is for, to exchange goods and services. If you can get, a mansion, I mean, right now you don't, but you wait and you can get a mansion with your Bitcoin. Like, I don't see why not doing something like that.
I also
And
think
for government, that's building schools for their people.
Yeah, I also think the calculus that like a government does is going to be different than like an individual consumer or like or individual, because at this point, right, I think like what they're looking at is they're saying, okay, how do we optimize for quality of life for our citizens and economic growth? Because those things are going to go hand in hand. And I think that the math that they're doing now is they're saying, hey, if we build 20 schools, that the benefit from that on quality of life and economic growth is actually going to outpace what we will be able to do with just more profits in Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Yeah. As far as like long-term growth goes, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, this maybe could be a low time preference move by El Salvador.
I mean,
for sure.
I definitely think so. They didn't go for anything crazy outlandish as a purchase. They were like, we want to invest in our public education system. Like that's a good thing for you to want to spend money on. And I think that it's important that, if we talk about the technical advancements that the Lightning Network is, we have to openly admit the fact that the Lightning Network is so you can spend your fucking sats. So
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is great. Like, what is the IMF doing? Like they're lending people money, they're building dams. Like somebody is telling them how to invest their money. With Bitcoin, again, this comes back to, I think this draws parallels to the Navajo Nation too. It allows El Salvador to internalize that autonomy and that freedom to do what they believe is right for their country. And so building schools, that decision, right? The Bitcoin blockchain doesn't give a fuck. The Bitcoin blockchain wasn't like, hey, Bukele, I think you should build some schools. It was just like, I'm doing my thing, leverage me the way you need to leverage me. And this is the way that they're choosing to leverage this technology for good. And in a lot of ways, that's what the Navajo Nation is doing as well. So it's just allowing these countries and these nations to kind of leverage this technology in the way that they see fit, not in the way that some person from some academic institution, who by the way is probably fucking wrong, thinks that they should be allocating resources. So it gives them the control. It's awesome.
And now that I think about it, I don't know where they're outsourcing, the construction of these schools, but those Bitcoins are going to stay in El Salvador, most likely. The people down there building the school, they're the one getting paid in the Bitcoin. And then the teachers, I imagine, are going to be getting paid with the Bitcoin. So I think it's actually a really great thing because it gets the Bitcoin out of the government's hand and just into the people's hands and builds schools.
Are they transferring it directly? Are they using the Bitcoin?
Or you think they're selling the fiat and selling for fiat and then using that? I have no idea.
Okay, we'll look that up. But that's a great point too. It's just getting recirculated in the economy. I mean, that's fiscal spending for you. So hopefully it'll boost our economy, somewhat.
Even if it is transition to fiat, that doesn't mean that the receiver doesn't transition it right into Bitcoin. With obviously we've seen, what was the statistic that how many percentage were unbanked and the percentage that now has a Chivo wallet?
Double. Double what we're banked now or have access to a Chivo wallet. Or
feel
that's
like
incredible.
Yes, at this point we can assume they're probably turning it into Bitcoin.
Probably. So what are you guys looking at over this next week? What are your guys' kind of directions for research? What are the questions you're asking and trying to answer over this next week until our next sats and caffeine?
Mine is all trying to understand Taproot as much as possible before the launch. So it's there's dev. You guys go ahead. I'm gonna find this guy on my Twitter because he's, I think every day until Taproot launches, he's basically doing a Twitter feed of stuff that Taproot does that people just don't really know about. And he's done 2 so far, and they've been pretty great.
That's dope.
I gotta bounce, guys, but this is good. I'll see you next weekend.
All right, sounds good. All right, see you, Mitch. Sean, you and I will hold down the fort for another couple minutes. We'll do the outro. Whatever we got to do.
This guy's tweet, I can't remember what his name is, but he's basically like breaking down kind of the technicalities of how some of this stuff works, and like not focusing on a lot of the the big buzzword stuff that people like me can talk about. Like, I have just enough information to be a little bit dangerous. This guy actually knows what he's talking about.
he's just deadly.
And I can't find. But regardless, like there's the devil in there, and he's doing really good work, and it's just really awesome to see people coming out like in the method that they know how, communicating different way, because I couldn't have the conversation that this guy's having, not even remotely. So, and seeing the engagement that he's getting from it just kind of goes to show that if you want to talk about, it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin, but obviously we're talking about Bitcoin. If you want to talk about Bitcoin, talk about it in your voice. Like, I appreciate the hell out of this man's voice because he understands a part of this that I do not know, and I don't want him to cater it to me. I want him to cater to the audience that he's capable of speaking to. So I think that's a really important thing for creators in the space, is like, don't change your voice, because your voice is the thing that makes you unique, and that's what's making this developer unique.
Totally makes sense. Let's see. So for me, over this next week, I'm going to be doing some writing on the Lightning Network. There's always more to learn on the Lightning Network. And then posting a video this Friday. It'll be 15 minutes, just rough little outline, and kind of we'll see where that goes. But this past week is exciting in Bitcoin. I mean, I feel like every week we get new, developments. The space is just moving so fast. So thank you everybody for tuning in. This is a great way at the end of your week just to get a good summary of kind of what happened in Bitcoin and why does it matter. And if you're interested in hearing more of this, like, go ahead. Definitely. I'm going to wait till this car goes by. Of course, I get this car going by. Could you hear it through my mic? Could you hear it?
No, you were good the whole time.
I was good. All right. Well, maybe it's a godsend. Either way, hit that subscribe button. That way you can kind of you can see us. We'll pop up in your feed. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Right? Is Mitch right? Is Peter Schiff really a Bitcoiner in disguise? So let us know in the comments below. Sean, any closing remarks, man?
Bitcoiners exist,
Yeah, there you go. Do Bitcoiners exist?
Thanks for stopping by, for everybody that watches the video. I see you, Morgan.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pause this recording, baby.